Imperva is the comprehensive digital security leader on a mission to help organizations protect their data and all paths to it. Only Imperva protects all digital experiences, from business logic to APIs, microservices, the data layer, and from vulnerable legacy environments to cloud-first organizations. With an integrated approach combining network, application, and data security, Imperva protects companies ranging from cloud-native startups to global multinationals with hybrid infrastructure. Start a free trial today and quickly protect your web applications at securityweekly.com/Imperva.
Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul's Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week, we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul's Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
Welcome back to Application Security Weekly. We just covered the news, and now it's time for our AppSec guest. I'm your host, Mike Shima. I'm here with John Kinsella, and we've got one brief announcement. Security Weekly listeners, save $100 on your RSA Conference 2023 full conference pass. RSA Conference will take place April 24th through 27th in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSA2023 and use the code 53UCyber. We hope to see you there. We also hope you'll come early and hang out at B-Sides SF on the 22nd and 23rd. Come say hi. Register now at bsidessf.org. Vandana is a security leader at Snyk. She is a member of the OWASP Global Board of Directors. She has experience ranging from AppSec to infrastructure and now dealing with product security. She also works in various communities towards diversity initiatives like InfoSec Girls and WOSEC. She has been a keynote speaker and trainer at various events, including Global OWASP AppSec, Black Hat, and B-Sides events in India. Vandana is a member of the Black Hat Asia Review Board, as well as multiple other conferences, including Grace Hopper India and OWASP AppSec USA. She is also one of the organizers of B-Sides Delhi. She has been the recipient of multiple prestigious awards and has been listed as one of the top women leaders in the field of technology and cybersecurity in India. Hello, Vandana. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mike, for inviting me. It's an honor to be here at the podcast. Thank you.
We're happy for you to come back to come by and talk with us, because clearly you've been talking about many, many important aspects of AppSec, people, processes, tools, all of the above. And I think speaking of RSA, I think you've got a presentation coming up soon at RSA as well this April.
Yes, absolutely. RSA is one of those conferences which is very amazing. And I spoke last year around DevSecOps, and this year I'm speaking at a very interesting topic about setting up something or setting up the AppSec program with Tencent's using the open source tools.
I guess changing AppSec programs on a dime, turning on a dime. I'm not sure what metaphors you'll have fun with, but Tencent sounds like a pretty decent budget and probably about the average budget for many startups for security. So with that, rather than talk about budget, because I think maybe that's a little bit more boring, let's get out of spreadsheet land and talk about some of those open source tools, perhaps. You know, what does it take to set up a program, or how do we have tools that can help inform and model or use within a program?
So while we talk about these open source tools, OWASP is Open Web Application Security Project. It used to be Open Web Application, now it's Worldwide Application Security Project. So it has tons of tools, a lot of documentation projects, and there are things that people even don't know exist. So with this presentation, I would like to share those tools, tips, technology, and even in the beginning of the session, you mentioned about that I'm trying to cater upon people, process, technology. So I'm trying to touch upon those tools with these aspects. For example, when we talk about processes, we need tools like Application Security Verification Standard, which can provide you with a checklist that this is how an application assessment can be done. These are the test cases that we should be following. And another aspect is while we talk about shift left, which means we are talking about DevSecOps. We're talking about adopting the security in the AppSec pipeline as early as possible, because we used to do it at a later stage, and that was a huge amount of effort to money that we were spending on. Now, from the design phase itself, there are tools like Application Security Verification Standard, which helps in design review. Then for threat modeling, OWASP, Threat Dragon, and Pytium. These are again free tools which anyone can pick up, customize for their own use, and can start working towards threat modeling. Because threat modeling is not something which you do when the application is ready to use or application is in development. It can be at any given stage of that application, because threat modeling is where you figure out what are the threats which are posing on your application. Then for secure code review, I'm working with a team to revamp the secure code review checklist. Now, gone are the days where we used to do manual code reviews. Now there are automated checklists, but still there's somewhat human intervention needed. So we're working towards revamping that, and I will be sharing the aspects around that. Apart from that, when we talk about software composition analysis, which has been in talk since we've started talking about supply chain security. So OWASP dependency check and OWASP dependency track. These are the two tools that I'm going to be sharing aspects. And similarly for DAST, which is Dynamic Application Security Testing, ZAP is the tool. Now for all the tools, it's very hard to fit it in like 15 minutes or 45 minutes. So what I've done is I have had interviews with all the project leaders, all the OWASP project leaders who are project leaders for those projects, and created a YouTube playlist so that people can understand those projects, specific projects, with the technical details rather than theoretical talk. We're talking about brief overview about that tool. Then we are talking in depth how the tool runs. Similarly, for documentation, especially for developers, we are forcing them to adopt to security, whether we accept it or not. But for them, certain documentation do really help. So I'm going to be talking about that documentation, which is web testing guide to mobile testing guide to API security testing, which is again an important aspect in application security, because applications are not just web apps now. We're talking about microservices, we're talking about API security, we're talking about mobile application security. Then we have cloud native apps. So there are changes which are there. So I'm going to be covering some bits and pieces around that as well as part of the talk, and these tools and tricks.
So it's going to be a busy talk. I'm impressed. I hope you're able to finish your slides before the last minute, because that's quite a bit. And you covered a ton of things that which was nice, was a mix of kind of processes, some tools, and also just talking about people. So you did hit, I think, all of those three in that list you were rattling off there. And we had just spoken with Josh from the ASVS about the upcoming 5.0 version. So we're quite a fan of the ASVS. But I also want to talk about bring in something maybe you didn't mention, which is a lot of this, putting these tools together, having documentation, figuring out shift left, how do we build an AppSec program? There's an angle of maturity to that, right? Figuring out when do you start with security? When do you have someone responsible for it? Or is this just a developer who's been tasked and you have to go do some secure code, go through the checklist now? And I know there's the OWASP SAM, but there's also the DSOM as well, so a DevSecOps maturity model. That one, I have to admit, I'm less familiar with. Tell us a little bit about the DSOM and maybe how it relates to the SAM as well. We have two different maturity models here.
Right. So the interesting bit is that when we talk about DSOM, so DSOM is very, very interesting because it caters to different maturity levels, from wherein 0 level to the highest maturity level. And when we talk about SAM, it covers end-to-end. Now, DSOM is more theoretical in a way wherein it tells you whether you have accomplished certain aspects of the whole DevSecOps model. So it covers that. And on top of it, there are certain measures that it defines as part of those maturity level. 0 is where you are in a very novice stage. Now, then it covers build, deployment, education and guild. It covers culture and organization, because we can have best of people, process, technology, but if you don't have the right culture, it is of no use. So it covers that aspect. It covers what are the processes we have, whether we are monitoring, whether we are logging, whether we have infrastructure. So it covers those aspects as well, from patch management as well. But now, when we talk about SAM, Security Assessment Maturity Model, so SAM is more of a project which covers certain pointers, that let's follow those pointers and see where do you stand right now. So it's more around software assurance model, whether you have governance, you have design, you have implementation, you have verification, you have operations. So these are two different kind of aspects. More from a governance perspective is SAM, more from a technical perspective is DSOM. This is just my understanding of these two things, as far as I understand these two tools, and the way I have discussed it with the project leaders. So with SAM, which is Software Assurance Maturity Model, it tries and provide and even analyze that how exactly software development cycle is being set up. And it completes the software life cycle in not specifically to technology and process way, but more from a governance or risk-driven perspective.
That makes sense. And I like that aspect too that you're pointing out with especially with the DSOM on the DevOps side, DevSecOps side, about the culture of security. And I think culture doesn't come from tools, even though you listed off many of the important projects that OWASP was doing, ZAP, ThreatDragon, these other types of tools. But culture comes from figuring out things like the ASVS, or understanding what's on the ASVS. How do we apply the ASVS? And honestly, possibly just having conversations, empathy between AppSec developers and AppSec and developers. So I'm curious, as you're looking at either OWASP resources or just broader open source resources, what do you look to, what do you point to as good examples of whether they are tools that foster culture or just practices, ways of managing teams to foster that security culture?
So it actually helps in help organization in fostering a security oriented culture, if I have to put it in a very simple way, if I'm answering right. And how it helps is that with different tools and technologies, it is like a buffet of processes which are laid down in a documentation, to tools, to certain aspects, how you can set up the culture. So it touches upon different aspects. From the buffet, whatever you need, you pick it up. For example, if your team does not like security, so you need to gamify it, then you have security knowledge framework. You have JuShop. These two are beautiful projects which help developers understand the security. And even I have done CTFs using these two projects. Similarly, for different aspects, OWASP has different tools and tips and tricks available. For hackers, like we are all hackers, but we want certain test cases, right? For that, there are cheat sheets available. And cheat sheets, in my purview, they used to be offensive. Now, if you look at OWASP cheat sheets for containers, for Kubernetes, for APIs, all of those things, even for SQL injection or injection in per se, those are all defensive. That's very interesting to see, because breaking the things is easy. And when you started building, it actually takes time.
And one of those aspects too is that I think you mentioned looking forward to an AppSec program on 10 cents, but a lot of and that's where open source tools, you can adopt those. But there is still time investment, right? So I don't think you can build and run an AppSec program on 10 cents and just 10 hours a week. There's got to be more of involvement here. And as you were just saying, a culture. So what could organizations, especially maybe startups, younger, those on the zeros or ones on the maturity model, what can they look forward to, or what can they expect to start to build an AppSec program?
Okay. Especially for startups, it's my favorite thing, where first of all, we don't have a lot of money. for startups, and we don't have a lot of bandwidth. We don't have a lot of tools. So it's like we have to build the best in what we have. So the first thing to do is define the security objective. What products do we have? What are the things that we have as a product which we're going to be serving? Then define what tools and technologies we need. Once we've defined the objective, then defining tools and techniques that we need. And so once we have identified tools and technologies, but how would you do that? Then OWASP has those tools defined in a programmatic way. There's a project specifically highlighting all of those things that let's go through. So it is, if you land on owasp.org/projects website, there itself you will find a Wayfinder, application security Wayfinder, which will help you in categorizing or in specifically defining what are the tools which are catering to requirements, what is for operations, what is for culture. For example, Security Champions Playbook, SAM, ASVS, MASVS, which is Application Security Verification Standard, Mobile Application Security Verification Standard. For design or threat modeling, PyTium, Cornucopia, all of these tools. And implementation, proactive controls, cheat sheet series, or for dependencies, dependency check. So as soon as you land onto the projects page, you would see the application Wayfinder. Because if you tell me to go through, especially for a startup, if you tell startup to go through all these tools, I don't have time and energy to do that. I will be lost. Yeah. So Wayfinder actually helps out. And even it actually lists down all the inventory of those tools as well. And if you want to know more about it, just go for OWASP's Project Spotlight series. I run this project for covering each project in detail for just 15 minutes. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I think we've got at least 20 of those spotlights. I think we have a link to your YouTube channel so that people can go find those. They can spend quite a good amount of time getting up to speed on each of those individual tools. I like how you're also pointing out to the Wayfinder here, rather than posit there's only one way to create an AppSec program. A Wayfinder, I think, helps give you context. It helps that choose your own adventure path of here's where my problems are now, or here are my questions. Wayfinder is going to help me. I also imagine, and I'm going to set this up in a second because this sounds maybe a bit off. I also imagine that ideally the Wayfinder, a lot of those paths go away. The reason I say that, like a checklist, I would love if we had fewer checklists around hardening checklists, and applications were just more default out of the box. So you don't have to have 20-page PDF of do this, do this, do this, so that it's absolutely secure. It's just a checklist of deploy, now move on to threat modeling, something else about the code you're writing yourself. So with that setup, I'm curious, when you look at the Wayfinder, is there something that you would wish that you would like to see maybe go away in another 10 years of OWASP because that problems area has been taken care of? Or is there another aspect of it that you would love, that you think is missing, that you would love to see more investment in?
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody at the board level and even the staff knows that the website needs to be revamped, wherein people, it becomes even more easier for people to find those projects. Right now, it's okay, but then we want to spend more bandwidth and maybe monetary level on the website, because we have the best of tools and technology and everything. But if you have everything right, but if people can't find it at the right time, or they need to spend time on finding something, then it's hard. So right now, OWASP is actually concentrating on that. So we're working on with some of the vendors who are helping us in revamping the website, who are professionals in specific this area.
You know, one thing that's sort of interesting about the Wayfinder, as I glance at it, is so when we first started talking about it and I brought it up, I'm like, wait, but where do you start, right? Like, so you think about that, either it could be a startup mindset or it could be a large enterprise, someone trying to get more into security. They look at that page, they're like, wait, there's no step one, what am I going to do? But at the same time, that's really accurate for the state of AppSec, right? I mean, I don't know if that was purposeful on your guys' part or not, but like it's you have to sort of more figure out where you are first and then sort of jump into that diagram, I think.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's right. So when we talk about the diagram, that was purposely done a couple of years back when I started with a project, with a talk called Running an AppSec Program with Open Source Tools, with OWASP tools. That was my first talk in 2020. Now, at RSA, I'm going to be giving the even more advanced talk on that. So then people thought, why not create a one-pager diagram where we just sort of list that? Now that's there, but still there's much more to it. So we are doing some kind of SEO work where you have certain keywords where you just put a keyword in the finder and it gives you the tool. And it gives you or suggests you the right kind of projects, maybe a documentation project, maybe a tools project, maybe something else, or maybe a cards game. So it tells you that. So right now we're working towards that.
Along those lines, one of the things with the Wayfinder is sort of the idea of, and I'll use the metaphor of just where am I on this path, which also means how good is my AppSec program? You know, I just started. Now, you mentioned the DSOM, the SAM, both of them are maturity models. So those give a relative way to say, at least I'm progressing towards what the industry, what like OWASP is recommending should be good behaviors within a program. But what's interesting on the Wayfinder, and I think a tough thing for AppSec programs, is metrics, and there are fewer arrows, or how do we handle metrics? Just to answer that question, am I secure? Which might also be the wrong question to be asking. But if someone is coming into AppSec, they want to know, am I secure? What should I be doing? Have I done enough? How do you look at those types of questions and help people answer that? Especially, these are developers coming into AppSec saying, help.
Mm-hmm. I think I again will go back to the DSOM then, that where do I stand? So this maturity model has a beautiful Excel sheet, and what it does is it actually lets you highlight, okay, this is what you have, this is what you need, and based on that, it gives you a score. Where do you stand? If I have to put it across that way. Because if I tell you that based on the Wayfinder, if I'll be able to find it, no, trust me, no. Because it's so vague that it's tough. It's tough. I have to admit it. So that's why I'm giving you the best example of DSOM, where you just go through those particularly mentioned checklist of items where for build, what do I have? For deployment, what do I have? Do I have patch management? Do I do education and guidance for the developers, not just for security testers? Because it's very important. As much as I spend on my security team to go through it, I equally need the bandwidth for my developers as well, which people don't understand, which organizations miss out on. We are forcing developers to run security. We want DevSecOps, where security becomes part of development and operations, and it's very integral part. But at the same time, we forget to educate the right people at the right time. I've had teams where I educated developers or I hired developers as part of my team, and they were the best of security team. Why? Because they knew the infra in and out. They knew the architecture in and out. If you have such kind of people who knows the things, trust me, you don't need like a extra effort to do that. You might not need to go extra mile for that. None of the thing is 100% secure, but at least secure or closer to being secure. Let's put it this way.
No, indeed. And I think I'm often of the opinion that I feel it's often easier to teach developers about security than the other way around, teaching AppSec folks about development. And the reason I say that is that developers already have the context of how applications are put together, but more importantly, they have the context of how things go wrong. Mistakes, bugs creep in. AppSec helps give some of that creative thinking about either how can you abuse a bug that exists, or how can you abuse a test case. So rather than saying a use case of all of your test suite, let's go through some abuse cases and do some clever thinking there. So that's why I like approaching developers from that perspective. And I wanted to ask you, Vandana, you've you were talking about doing training. You've given many presentations, as we talked about, training, keynotes, etc. What are some of the approaches or things that you keep in mind to do that, to do effective communication, effective training, or just getting across your message for different audiences?
The best way is to show them what can go wrong. It's very, very important. And developers, to anyone, for example, project managers also, everyone thinks differently. Everyone KPIs are different, right? When the performance indicators are different, they think differently as well for that. For leadership, they want the numbers. For developers, they want their application to look perfect. So we have to design these trainings in such a way where we deliver it for the right audience and tweak some content around it. For example, a company that I worked for had an incident where a developer accidentally committed sensitive information, such as the private keys and passwords, to the public code repository. And we all know that once anything is committed on the internet, anywhere, even if we remove that, it is going to be in the cache forever or archives forever. So that led to a big security breach, and that also required the whole company to reset passwords and revoke the access keys. It also highlighted the importance of educating developers on security coding practices. Now, we created those security champions, not just in development teams, but in testing team, but in project managers, the people who got interested towards it. Because security is something where you cannot force upon someone. It's something from within. Like we have our phone. Do we keep passcode on our phone? We do, right? Because we don't want anyone to check our WhatsApp messages, to our Signal, to whatnot, or our emails or photographs. And even something happens to our phone, it is secure that we can wipe it out remotely. So while we do that, we are conscious about these things. So at the same time, while we talk about people who are working in the organization, everyone has the same goal. Organization application should be good on the internet. For security, we want it to be the secure application, come what may. For testers, the application should keep running smoothly. But while we have all that, we have the same goal that nothing should happen to our organization. Because anything happens, it would go backtrack and relay who did what, right? So, but now the way we are thinking, the way we are changing the paradigm, it means security is everyone's responsibility. And we all will be working towards that. So which means conscious efforts by organization leadership, saying that this is what you can get from tools, technology perspective. Processes should be flexible enough to accommodate everyone. Where we say that they are stringent, but they are catering to everyone. Similarly, technology should be for everyone. We can have best of people, process, technology, but if those are not combined with the right culture, it will not work out, which means telling the development team, security team, these are the tools can be made available. These are the things that we need. Openly talking about it. Transparency, and especially not just an application security program, but anywhere you go, transparency is a very major aspect that we all need to work towards to attain something meaningful.
Yeah, and I'd like to go back to the example you use. A developer commits a private key, commits a secret or sensitive info to a GitHub repo, and it goes public. I'd like to use that as an example of security culture that you've been talking about, and kind of work it through a little bit. So the question here is either if you want to share the anecdotes of perhaps even what went wrong there, or what's an ideal scenario? How do you handle, from especially a people perspective, developer commits that secret, goes to a public repo, bug bounty researcher finds it, they're asking for money. How do you handle this? What does good security culture look like in that type of scenario? How it's identified, handled, and responded to?
So personally, I will take an example of a recent incident with Circle CI. I was amazed by the way they did it. Security incidents happen. We all accept it. But the way they accepted, they worked towards with their developers. And even they made sure that everybody knows about it. There's something which has happened. And everybody started changing their credentials. I think that's a classic case of things that we want in any organization. Maybe it's just that the way I read through whole piece, I felt really amazed. They put in so much efforts. They created blogs to sharing details on how you can make sure that you automate the things, to automate the credentials changing. And they accepted that something has happened. So the culture says, let's accept what has gone wrong and move further towards making sure that this does not repeat. And we're working towards an organization which is better in security. And even if something goes wrong, how soon we can recover from that by working together in that. And we're not blaming someone that, oh, you did that. This has happened. Because of you, this has gone wrong. No, that's not what we want. We want to make sure that we have a blameless culture. And again, my favorite thing is where we have security champions, where we talk about security awareness, where we talk about encouraging the security behaviors, because it's a behavior issue. Let's put it this way. There are cases where misconfiguration have happened, maybe unintentionally, but when people started working together, they started automating things, whichever was or whatever was humanly possible. So automation, again, it's a big piece of security culture program. So I would say supporting the continuous improvement, making sure that we are encouraging those security behaviors, and we are promoting security awareness so that people know that here things can go wrong as well.
Indeed. And clearly an aspect of transparency is what you were highlighting too from that Circle CI example, in the sense of if there is any blame, there's no longer blame of blaming companies that you had a security incident. These do happen. Now, that's not trying to be pessimistic or just giving up on things, but it's more of shifting a blame to, wait, why aren't you transparent? Like, why aren't you sharing appropriate details or giving us more information about what happened? That feels like a switch that we haven't seen enough companies do in these types of postmortems. This, in addition to not blaming or even just not firing the developer who made that commit, because some accidents happen and maybe process failed that person. Vandana, as one of the things we also like to ask of all of our guests is to describe AppSec in 3 words. Now, you've been in AppSec quite a while, and you've seen it from many, many different angles, and there's no other constraints or rules about this other than 3 words. So I'd love to hear what your response is to that.
Secure or scare?
Oh,
ooh, I like it.
Oh, yeah, we've gotten, no one has repeated anything. We've gotten a lot of creative answers that have surprised us. That's a wonderful one. So whether it's going to secure or scare folks, what else in addition to RSA, what else is coming down the line for you? Where else can they look to see some of your work or that you wanted to draw attention to?
So after RSA, I'm speaking at Black Hat Asia. I'm part of the Black Hat Asia Review Board, so I will be at Black Hat Asia in Singapore. And I would love to meet the people there and talk about application security programs for founders and whatnot.
That's wonderful. And yes, hopefully, please, I encourage all of our listeners, please go say hi to Vandana if you meet her at one of the conferences, because she's always giving great talks and always doing a lot of work in community building as well, which we didn't have a chance to touch on yet. So we'll have to have you back, Vandana, to talk about community as well. But thank you for joining us this time.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to chat with you and be here on the podcast.
Thank you again. I also want to thank John and all of our listeners. Please do subscribe, hit that like button, check out the show notes, and speaking of taking walks, check out Moonlight by Lavenu. We'll see you next time on Application Security Weekly.